Welcome to Speed Reads. The Expectation Effect. Discover the power expectations have on outcomes. It feels like the idea of mind over matter has a use in almost any scenario. In sports, coaches preach the idea of using mental toughness to push past our body's known physical limits. In business, the saying, "If you can dream it, you can do it," has practically become the go-to slogan for entrepreneurs and innovators worldwide. And in medicine, even just receiving a diagnosis as being sick or healthy can make all the difference in how our bodies actually feel. And if you don't know what I'm talking about here, think about it. Have you ever found yourself reading a list of symptoms for an illness, only to then begin feeling each of those very symptoms shortly afterwards? Even if they weren't there before? I know I, for one, am certainly not immune to the imagined effects that WebMD has had on my bodily health. But imagined or not, the concept of mind over matter has always left one lingering question. Just how much can our mindset directly influence our reality? And to what extent do self-fulfilling prophecies actually end up shaping our lives? David Robson, the author of The Expectation Effect, says quite a lot. And in these summaries, you'll discover the extent to which your mind is a powerful prediction machine dedicated to making sure that your reality matches up with your inner expectations. From the aging process to the effects of medication on your body, you'll uncover the power of the mind to change your productivity, your health, and your future. You have untapped reserves of mental stamina. When Barack Obama was president of the United States, he wore almost exactly the same suit every single day. The only thing that varied was the color. The suit was either dark brown or navy blue. Let's forget about the beige suit fiasco. And Obama isn't alone in his limited wardrobe choices either. In fact, lots of highly successful people like Steve Jobs, Arianna Huffington, and Mark Zuckerberg all prefer to wear the exact same outfit every day. Why? It all has to do with their expectations. But as you'll soon discover in this summary, these expectations are totally wrong. The reason why Obama and Zuckerberg dress the way they do is because they're trying to get rid of unnecessary decisions. For most of us, deciding what to wear each morning requires conscious thought. Do these pants match this shirt? Are these the best shoes to wear with this jacket? According to a theory known as ego depletion, we only have a limited amount of mental resources to use each day. After we've done a certain amount of hard work, decision-making, or difficult thinking, those resources are exhausted. And with this in mind, these leaders like Obama, Zuckerberg, Huffington, they don't want to waste this mental capacity on thinking about exactly what to wear. And on the surface, this ego depletion theory seems to make sense. After all, how many times have you come home from a hard day's work and felt too exhausted to do anything except lie on the couch? And some research has even suggested that this is the very reason why successful people sometimes seem more prone to cheat on their partners, because they've used up all their mental willpower on their career, that they don't have the capacity to work on their relationships as well. But just how true is any of this? Because in fact, other evidence suggests that the ego depletion theory is instead just one big expectation effect. The mental exhaustion we feel after working hard is real, but it's only real because we expect it to be. At least, that's according to a study by Austrian psychologist Veronika Job. In the study, each participant was asked to complete 2 mentally draining tasks. Before they began their first task, Job asked each participant whether they thought hard work usually A, depletes their mental resources, or B, energizes them. Interestingly, Job found that the people who had listed hard work as exhausting did much worse on the second task than they did the first. In contrast, those who listed hard work as energizing performed evenly across both tasks. Now, this might seem like the predictable outcome, but in a follow-up study, Job then tested whether it was possible to change people's beliefs and expectations about their own mental depletion. So, for the next study, before the participants undertook the two activities, they were tasked with reading one of two statements. One statement stated that hard work depletes our mental resources, and the other stated the opposite, that hard work has been proven to energize our minds. Afterwards, Job found that the people who had read the energizing statement performed twice as well on their second task as those who had read the depleting statement, all because their expectations had been shifted. And this just goes to show that our mental capacity is much greater than many of us believe. With the right expectations, we really can get more done. So, the next time you find your concentration waning in the middle of a hard task, try and remind yourself of a time when you found a challenging task energizing rather than draining. Then, ask yourself whether that energizing task was objectively harder than the task you're undertaking right now. You might be surprised to find that reframing how you view the challenging task at hand might just give your mental stamina enough of a boost to power through. Is it ever right for a doctor to lie to their patients? Placebos are powerful drugs, with many potential benefits. In the 19th century, U.S. President Thomas Jefferson wasn't so sure. On the one hand, he knew that it probably wasn't the most moral thing for a trusted doctor to deceive a patient. But on the other hand, Jefferson believed that placebos could do patients a world of good. 200 years later, science is beginning to understand that Jefferson was right. For those of you who don't know, a placebo is a dummy medication that contains no active ingredients. This means it has no physiological benefits or disadvantages for the person taking it. Some of the first modern evidence of the benefits of placebos was collected by a military doctor during World War I. Henry Beecher was an anesthetist, whose job was to treat Allied soldiers in France and Italy. These soldiers had come straight from the battlefield, and their wounds were often horrific and deeply painful. Worse still, the pain-killing drug morphine was in short supply, and Beecher was sometimes faced with the awful prospect of operating on these men without anesthetic. But during the course of his work, Beecher realized something was wrong. Oftentimes, a wounded soldier's pain could be effectively treated with a simple saline solution. As long as the man believed that he was being injected with morphine, he would respond in almost exactly the same way as if he'd been given the real drug. In fact, Beecher estimated that his placebo saline solution was about 90% as effective as morphine itself. It was so effective that it only took a few minutes to treat the wounded soldier. It was so effective that it actually reduced the chance of the patient going into cardiac arrest while they were being operated on, which was a major risk during surgery without anesthesia. Since Beecher's pioneering discovery, placebos have shown over and over again to have powerful effects. Consider recent evidence from sufferers of Parkinson's disease. Many of its symptoms, such as shaking limbs, are caused by a lack of dopamine in the brain. With this in mind, existing medications boost dopamine levels, which provides relief to the sufferer. Remarkably, though, when Parkinson's sufferers are given placebo drugs, their symptoms can improve by up to 30%. How can we explain this? The answer is it may all come down to the patient's expectations. Experts now believe that our brains can act as the body's internal pharmacy. When you expect to receive a benefit from a medication, your brain then opens up its pharmacy and releases biochemical substances that have a similar effect on your body that the real drug would have. So in the case of the Parkinson's placebo, the patient's brain may have released more of its own dopamine or a dopamine-like substance. Evidence for the pharmacy theory comes from a study that looked into placebo painkillers. The researchers believed that receiving a morphine placebo would stimulate the patient's brains into creating their own natural painkillers, known as opioids. To test this theory, the patients were also given another substance at the same time as the placebo. This substance was called naloxone, and it effectively blocks opioid receptors in the brain. The researchers found that the naloxone stopped the placebo from working, just as they would have expected if they had administered it alongside actual morphine. This suggests that the placebo morphine really was stimulating the brain to produce its own opioids. Interestingly, though, not all placebos have the same effect on us. Again, it comes down to our expectations. Studies have found that larger placebo pills produce a more beneficial effect than smaller ones. Similarly, placebos in the form of injections are then even more beneficial than pills. And finally, the biggest placebo effect is seen after surgery. And so the greater expectations we have for the procedure, be it pills or surgery, the more placebo power we pump into ourselves. With this all in mind, let's return to that very first question that Thomas Jefferson grappled with. Is it ever right for doctors to deceive their patients? And while we don't have a clear answer, one thing is for sure: when we expect placebos to deliver powerful results, they tend to do just that. So, having learned this, how can you now apply this knowledge to your own health? For starters, when you start taking medication, try to visualize the positive effects it could have on your body. Doing so could help these effects become a reality. If you expect it to happen, your body will follow your mind's lead. And second, when you're prescribed a drug, take the time to ask your physician exactly how it works to help your body. Just knowing this information may help in enhancing the effects of the drug. And finally, your expectations will likely receive a boost if you can just talk to other patients who have used the same medication and found it effective. Simply knowing that it worked for other people may enhance the chances that it will bring benefits to you too. In extreme cases, negative expectations can kill you. After discussing the positive effects of high expectations, it's only fair to lay out the risks of negative expectations. Let's start with the opposite of a placebo, a nocebo. Placebo in Latin translates as I shall please, whereas nocebo means I shall harm. Just as our expectations can turn saline solution into morphine, they can also transform nocebos, harmless things, into deadly weapons. Consider the following infamous case of self-willed death. Let's travel back to the 1970s. In Nashville, Tennessee, a man was diagnosed with terminal esophageal cancer. This came as a shock, especially since the cancer was apparently so widespread that his doctor doubted that he would live to see next Christmas. Well, the man did live to see Christmas, but he died just a few weeks later, in January. To those around him, it seemed the cancer had won. But when an actual autopsy was performed, the pathologist made a shocking discovery. There was no tumor on his esophagus. There was a tumor on his liver, but it was small and certainly not terminal. But then, if that was the case, what caused the man's actual death? With his dire diagnosis in mind, there was only one conclusion to be drawn. It was the doctor's prognosis that had killed him. He had expected to die around Christmas of that year. And so, he did. Our negative expectations can harm our health in other ways, too. Often, the most potent nocebos come in the form of perceived side effects to real medications. This means that when we expect to suffer a side effect of a drug, we are more likely to experience it. Take, for example, a medication known as finasteride, which is used to treat enlarged prostates. An uncommon side effect of finasteride is erectile dysfunction. But even with those unlikely odds, one study found that men who were explicitly warned that erectile dysfunction was a potential side effect were 3 times more likely to suffer from it. In other words, many men experienced this life-changing symptom simply because they were told about it. Similar nocebo effects have been found in the use of aspirin to treat the disease angina. Patients who were told that the aspirin might cause side effects of indigestion and stomach discomfort were 6 times more likely to stop the treatment than people who hadn't been told about these side effects. And when asked what their reason for stopping the treatment was, nausea and indigestion. This just goes to show that our expectations can, quite literally, make us sick. So, if this news is starting to bring down your own health, luckily, there are ways you can prevent any harmful expectations from taking root. First, when a man is told when a medication does come with the chance of an unpleasant side effect, try to reframe your thinking around your actual chances of experiencing it. For example, if you learn that 1 in 10 patients suffer from a certain side effect, keep reminding yourself that that means 90% of patients didn't suffer from the side effect. So, the odds of you feeling it are actually pretty low. Even just this simple reframing of expectations could prevent your body from needlessly developing these side effects on its own. Age is nothing but a number. Patty Jones loves to dance the salsa. Not just any salsa, but acrobatic salsa. This form of the dance involves swinging through the air on trapezes and requires perfect agility and poise. Jones is very good at acrobatic salsa. So good, in fact, that she and her dance partner Nico have been featured in television talent shows around the world, from the UK to Argentina. But Jones' incredible salsa moves aren't the only reason she's become a dance sensation. It also has something to do with the fact that she's 85 years old. Ask Jones and she'll tell you that it doesn't feel hard to dance acrobatic salsa at 85. Why? Because she doesn't feel like she's in her 80s at all. Inside, she feels like a much younger person. And so, she expects to perform like a younger person too. And this makes sense. Evidence from Harvard University researchers suggests that how old we feel actually has a big influence on our abilities, our health, and even our appearance. For example, in 1979, Harvard psychologist Ellen Langer conducted a study in which 70 to 80-year-old men and women were invited to spend a week-long vacation at a secluded monastery. But this wasn't just any monastery. Before the guests arrived, Langer's team had turned the clock back 20 years. They decorated each room as if it was 1959, even going so far as to lay out magazines and newspapers from that exact year. They also asked their guests to spend the week discussing political and sporting events from 1959, as if they were taking place in the present rather than in the past. And finally, they asked guests to write a biography of their lives for the year of 1959, including everything they had done during that year. Most importantly, this biography had to be written in the present tense. The goal was to make these guests feel as if they were really living in 1959, not 1979, and as if they were 20 years younger than their real age. After this first set of guests returned home, Langer's team brought in another group of 70 to 80-year-olds. This group also spent a week in the monastery, but when they discussed events from 1959, they did so in the past tense. This was meant to make them feel as if 1959 was in fact 20 years ago, and that they were still their true ages, living in the present. Then, after both group stays were completed, Langer's team compared a series of health and cognition tests taken before and after their monastery experience. And the results were astonishing. After spending a week imagining they were 20 years younger, the first group performed significantly better on their cognitive tests than before their stay at the monastery. Not only that, their vision also improved, they had better flexibility in their joints, and their levels of arthritic inflammation also improved. To top it all off, when independent observers who were not part of the study saw photographs of this group that were taken just after their monastery vacation, they rated them as looking significantly younger than the photos of the same group taken only a week earlier. Many of them said this was due to their posture, because after the study they appeared to walk taller and more easily than before. On the other hand, the second group of guests didn't have much to show for their stay. Those who hadn't been asked to imagine that they were living in the past saw almost none of these improvements. It just goes to show, at the end of the day, maybe age really is nothing more than a number. You've just listened to our summary to the expectation effect by David Robson. Final summary. The key message in this summary is that your mind is a powerful tool to fight against illness, inaction, and even aging. By visualizing positive outcomes for yourself, you make it all the more likely that those outcomes will become your reality. You might not be able to think yourself into becoming healthy or young, but you can certainly create the right mental condition to help you flourish. So to implement this into your daily life, here's a quick piece of actionable advice to take with you. Find a way to channel high expectations. It's hard to have a positive mindset all the time, so instead try and find something tangible to help steer your mindset, like a lucky charm that an athlete might use. Something that you can take with you on your daily routine, even if it's just for a special occasion like a big interview. If you can focus your expectations into this one lucky object, that might just provide that extra bit of positive expectation that you need to make a real difference. Because a little superstition can go a long way if you believe it. Thanks so much for listening. And if you can, please leave us a rating and subscribe to our channel. You can find the rated button on your screen right now. We always appreciate your feedback. See you in the next one.